Ladies, if you are a triple threat to society, aka hot, intelligent, and nice, you need to learn to protect yourself, or society is going to bite you in the. Let's talk about the concept of the Manic Pixie Dream Girl and the dark side of pretty privilege. Hi everyone, my name is Ariel and welcome back to my channel. Today we are entering a new moon in Pisces, and with all this heightened intuition, I want to talk about the concept of the Manic Pixie Dream Girl, why it's so disempowering and damaging to women, my experiences with it, and how it's tied to the deep root of objectifying women, the dark side of pretty privilege. It may be controversial to some people, but I have so many opinions on this, and I think it's really important to bring to light. So anyways, let's talk about it. If you're unfamiliar with the term, a Manic Pixie Dream Girl is typically this archetype in film who doesn't really have a personality or any character traits other than the fact that she's unattainable, mysterious, and beautiful. The men in these shows are always madly in love with her and kind of project their ideals of a dream woman onto her. She doesn't really have any other purpose other than that. Examples are Summer in 500 Days of Summer and Bella in Twilight, in my opinion. You don't have to agree with me. Or Elena in Vampire Diaries. Just seen as this dream girl who you never really truly get to know. Surprise, surprise, this resonates and has a lot of ties to real life examples of, historically objectifying women and tying them to their appearances for what they can provide for men other than seeing them for who they really are. Ladies, you are too cool and unique and interesting and fun and intelligent to be bound to a fantasy and this projection that some man has put onto you. Embrace that. That's what's gonna make you an it girl, and not trying to be this manic pixie dream girl with no personality. I just kind of wanted to talk about this dark side of pretty privilege, if you'll call it that. Let's break it down. But I think a lot of times attractive women tend to be seen as a concept, an ideal, a fantasy to men, and then it puts and reinforces the pressure to just fixate on appearances, which is why a lot of times really attractive women, you can hate on them for being so attached to their appearance, but how could they not be when they're only seen for what they look like? And obviously this does not tie to all men, all women, or every relationship. And obviously I'm not justifying this, and I think it's so important to recognize, to be aware, and to work on building yourself to be beyond your appearances. But it is a really difficult struggle that a lot of people face. Has been historical and cultural ties to linking women for their physical, what they can do for men, and what they look like. Most women have faced some form of feeling objectified in their lifetime, but in my opinion, there is no one that faces this fantasy or this projection more than girls who grew up kind of weird or unattractive and then had some form of transformation and then became conventionally attractive and then had to deal with society with this new persona. When you're in that space and you still see yourself as someone who's unattractive, it's really easy for people, especially men in relationships, to kind of take advantage of that and project their fantasies onto you, hence the manic dream girl mindset. Sometimes we will chase and attract men who reignite those feelings. We feel the need to chase and prove to them, to heal that childhood wound, that we can be validated and seen for who we are, when that is just not the case, when that person is never going to heal your wound. I am going to talk about my personal experience. So I don't know if you guys have seen that TikTok that's like, when he thinks he bagged a baddie, but I'm just a weird girl now happens to be hot. Something along the lines of that. And I have never felt something hit so hard in my life Because I feel like a common pattern with girls who had a glow up, sometimes you still internally see yourself as that past version of you with all the insecurity, all the trauma. It's really jarring to handle or see life in a new way. Even though your external has shifted, your internal is still the same. Because I had that problem for so many years where no matter how I looked, I still felt like me when I was weird and like bullied in school, you know. I couldn't handle the concept of stepping into a new persona along with my external appearance. And girls, it's so important, or anyone in general, it's so important also work on the internal, or else society is going to bring you, especially men who are going to take advantage of your insecurities, because that's exactly what happened to me. If you are a pretty girl or someone who just had an extreme glow up, you need to learn to protect yourself and build your confidence internally. Growing up, I was a weird ass kid. I was an only child for the most of my life, and not having a lot of people around me, I had zero social cues and I kept to myself most of the time. Another thing about growing up in an Asian culture, at least in my experience, you are not accepted for who you are. Like, oh, just be yourself, love yourself as you are. Not a thing in Asian families. So I always already had kind of a lot of insecurity about who I was, and society reflected back to me because, again, this is a world for extroverts. If you're introverted, sometimes people are going to think you're weird. I didn't really have a problem with that until I became pretty. Both my biggest dub and my biggest downfall. The pros, I got to experience life as a pretty person and experience pretty privilege. The downsides was that I abandoned my inner child. I abandoned my creativity to fit into this realm of what society expected me to be, which was really sad for myself. But we're going to talk about how I've healed that and everything I've learned along the way. When I had like 2 friends and bullied for my interests, and on top of that, a really critical household, obviously I had really low self-esteem. And then after it just became hot and had a glow up, like all of a sudden I like didn't know how to proceed with life, because I went from being bullied and being seen as socially challenged to all of a sudden getting comments like, oh my god, you're so unique, you're so different, you're so cool, you're like that girl. And I was like, where was this glaze when I was top? You know, like, I'm still the same person, so make it make sense. It's really hard to all of a sudden turn into a femme fatale when you still see yourself as the past. My internal system was still the same as before, and it was really hard for me to accept new things into my life or shift my reality. I was so confused because I had literally been bullied and shamed for my personality in the past. So now, like, approaching these new relationships, whether with guys or with girls, I was so hesitant to let myself express myself, you know, because being shamed for it was really traumatic. So I kind of repressed my personality, repressed my interests for so many years to be accepted by society. It was so harmful for my inner child, and it's so sad to think about because I gave up on so much of my creativity and so much of my interests and my hobbies. In reality, my personality didn't change. I was just now accepted for it rather than shamed, and it was such a hard concept to grasp. And I think the important part of all of this is to be able to accept yourself internally, because when you have love for yourself, like, you're not going to be seeking it for elsewhere. Let's talk about the dark side and the consequences of being a fantasy rather than a person. They see you as who they want you to be. They see you as the person, as the image they've created in their head, this fantasy that has nothing to do with who you really are, because they never try to actually know you. Or when they get to know you and they realize you are nothing like this image they created with their head, that you actually have a personality, you're intelligent, you're funny. It's like all of a sudden the illusion is shattered and they have to deal with seeing you as a person. And when they can't handle it, they back off. When I didn't know my worth, I allowed and I attracted men, not all men. I've had some men who have been the kindest, purest people in my life, but some men who saw me as a concept and projected their fantasies, their qualities of their dream woman onto me rather than seeing me for who I really was. And it made me reinforce the idea of like, I am not enough as I am only my appearance. And then it just continues the cycle of fixating on my appearance and not learning to truly heal and love myself. And it's such an abandonment of your inner child. The first person that I dated in college straight up told me to my face, he was so self-aware that he literally told me the reason he couldn't commit to me was because he put me on a pedestal and he idealized me so much that he couldn't see me as a person. He was like, I just see you as this like IG baddie that every guy on the street is waiting to date. And I feel like I over idealize you, which is why I'm so hesitant to commit to you in a relationship. He literally told me he couldn't commit to me because he saw me as a trophy. Honestly, props to him for being so self-aware and saying it to my face. But this is just concrete evidence that this exists and I'm not being delusional. In reality, he just saw me as a fantasy and he was never going to see me for who I really was. So all this energy that I used to try to achieve this was such a waste and could have been used to just better my life or attract someone who actually saw me for who I was. And since I study abroad and I have lived in multiple places, I've realized that culture also plays into it because as an Asian woman, I was this exotic Manic Pixie Dream Girl. And on top of that, I know we've all heard of yellow fever and the Oxford study. So when I moved to the US, it was like getting objectified with a little sprinkle of fetishization. I can never win. Because I feel like when I moved to the US, so many like American women were really outspoken and they knew how to voice their opinions and stand their ground. I admired, by the way. They knew themselves and they weren't so tied to male validation as I was when I was growing up in Asian culture. So I admired that. But then men that I met in America liked me for being a repressed version of myself. You're not like the other girls here. You know what? I am exactly the other girls here. I'm actually worse than the other girls. But because I have repressed myself for so long, you just can't see that yet. It's not a compliment, babes. I can make a whole another video on just my experience in dating overseas as an Asian woman, but that's a topic for another day. At my worst, there was a pattern of men who would put me on a pedestal, and then after realizing that I actually had a personality and thoughts and feelings, they would pull away. And I was like, and at my lowest, I saw it as a reflection and a confirmation of I'm not good enough, my personality is not good enough. But now, after changing my self-concept, I was like, you know what, like if you are authentic and someone pulls away from that, that is just a confirmation from the universe that they are not your person. Because no matter how this random guy makes you feel terrible about yourself, that person is never going to heal your wound. You can't change a person, you can only change how you see yourself. If someone doesn't want to see you for who you are, let them. Let them, because there's gonna be someone who doesn't make you constantly question yourself. There is another man out there who would appreciate your uniqueness and sees all your imperfections as something that makes you even more beautiful rather than something that pushes them away. It is such a torturous cycle that I never want any other woman to experience because we deserve to be loved for who we truly are. Being here to do what we were truly meant to do, it's a cycle of repressing women. I don't want to get this gendered and passionate here, but here I am because I really do think it's a way for society to repress women from achieving our best potential. fixating on our appearances, comparing ourselves to other women, and always needing to be hotter. For so long, I sensed it, but I accepted this Manic Pixie Dream Girl projection onto me because I didn't think that I was worthy beyond my appearance. And that stopped me from breaking from the cycle until I became self-aware. So I'm trying to share my experience to bring awareness to some other girls or other people who have had the same experience. So how do we break free from this cycle? Because I can proudly say I am like 90% free, and it really comes from accepting yourself and having love for yourself, which is the hardest thing in the world, and I'm still in the process. Like, life is a learning experience, so I think the main part is just knowing that whatever you are seeking, whether that's love, validation, all starts from within, and it comes from within, as cliche as it sounds. Find a person who sees you for your soul. There is no shortage of men who are gonna think you're hot. It's really not a compliment to me anymore. Like, yes, I will still feel flattered, but that's nothing special. What is unique and is valuable is a man who will see you for your soul, beyond your external, who appreciates you for who you really are. And trust me, there is a man out there who will. This has been a very hating on the men I've talked to video, but there have also been the kindest guys out there who did see me for my soul, so I am not disregarding that at all. It's 2025, like, this has been going on for too long, and it will only be a toxic loop of chasing validation and hyperfixating on our looks if we don't become self-aware and break free of that. At the end of the day, it is not a compliment to be fantasized, to be a manic pixie dream girl. You will only be lusted over, never really loved. We need to break this cycle of fantasizing women and seeing ourselves and be seen and loved for our souls, and love ourselves for our souls beyond how we are perceived externally. Anyways, I hope that helped, and have a beautiful day.